Bronny was scoreless and did not play in the second half. The Lakers beat Minnesota behind a dominant performance from Anthony Davis, 36 points, 16 rebounds, and 3 block shots. Sad news for Dodgers Nation. Fernando Valenzuela passed away Tuesday night. He was 63. The legendary pitcher was with the Dodgers for 10 of his 17 Major League seasons. He was the National League Cy Young Award winner and Rookie of the Year in 1981. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is here for you as you make your voting plan. And we've got a few things you may want to know. In the state of California, you can register to vote all the way up until the last day to vote, which is November 5th. In LA County, you may vote at any voting center or polling place of your choosing. Early voting has already started, both in person and by mail. If you need information about your registration or any election question, call the Registrar of Voters at 800-815-2666. That's 800-815-2666, or visit lavote.gov. Once you fill out your mail-in ballot, you may drop it in any county election mailbox found outside places like libraries, or you could drop it off with a poll worker at any vote center. If you suspect election foul play, voter suppression or intimidation, or other irregularities, or if you need to know more about your rights, call the Election Protection Hotline at 1-866-OUR-VOTE. That's 866-687-8683. From any state. And if you need more information on specific candidates or propositions, check out our interviews and analysis on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, November 5th is the last day to vote, and the sooner we do it, the better. Helping you vote like your life depended on it, because it does. Your election information station, KBLA Talk 1580.
No changes. Wake up in the morning and I ask myself, is life worth living? Should I blast myself? I'm tired of being poor and even worse, I'm black. My stomach hurts, so I'm looking for a purse to snatch. Cops give a damn about a Negro. Pull a trigger, killing, he's a hero. Get it to the kids who the hell cares. One less hungry mouth on the welfare. First ship them, don't let them deal with brothers. Give them guns, step back, watch them kill each other. It's time to fight back, that's what Huey said. 2 shots in the dark, now Huey's dead. I got love for my brothers, but we can never go nowhere unless we share with each other. We gotta start making changes. Learn to see me as a brother instead of 2 distant strangers. And that's how it's supposed to be. How can the devil take a brother if he's close to me? I let it go back to when we played as kids, but then changed. That's the way it is. Come on, come on.
That's just the way it is. Things will never be the same. That's just the way it is. Oh yeah. That's just the way it is. Things will never be the same. Oh, yeah. That's just the way it is. Oh yeah.
I see no changes. All I see is racist faces. Misplaced hate makes disgrace to races. We under. I wonder what it takes to make this one better place. Let's erase the wasted.
KBLA Talk 1580. Yep, it's that kind of a day, that kind of a week, the kind of day and week that we're going to get our hustle on and make it happen no matter what else is going on, because we are less than 2 weeks away from Election Day. Look, you can follow us, like us, find us, subscribe to us. All of those things help us stay in business, including downloading our app, which is available from the App Store or the Google Play Store for free. If you missed a show, if you missed my conversation with District Attorney George Gascon or would-be District Attorney Nathan Hochman, they are available on YouTube. They are available wherever you get your podcasts for free. And then we're on all the social media platforms at KBLA 1580. I am there at DiPrima Radio, DiPrima, and then radio. So, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it on the show. Let's talk about it after the show. I am planning to get my butt out this weekend, try to do some door knocking, phone calling, canvassing, and all that good stuff so that we can help make a difference and not feel discouraged or depressed about what is going on with this election. And I encourage you also, always to jump in the chat. So, in any case, you can go to our chat at KBLA 1580. That's where we are on YouTube, and that's where the conversation goes on. And a lot of you guys have been hearing me talk about the Justice, Care, and Opportunities Department of LA County conference that I went to. It was a conference and a festival. I had the opportunity to host 2 panels. One of them was a one-on-one conversation with Hit Boy. I can't wait to get that videotape. It was just a really interesting conversation with a truly creative soul who has produced hits, the name fits, for so many different individuals from Nas to Beyonce to Nipsey Hussle, and just his own journey with the justice system, being a justice impacted young person, but also the way he decided to step up and help JCOD. And I wish more people knew about LA County JCOD. That's why I'm talking about it, because as we're in this moment in history where it seems like we're in a serious backlash, white lash, back to the lock 'em up, throw away the key, don't rehabilitate, in which even some of our own people are caught up in that mentality. There is also the flowering of this incredible thing, which was created by us, the voters, when we passed Measure J and said we want more mental health services. We want more help for people to stay out of prison and out of the prison industrial complex. We want more services for young people. We want more supportive services, more housing. We don't want to spend all our money on incarceration and police. And that is what JCOD comes out of. And so at this conference, I met a number of super important and intelligent people who I hadn't met before who are doing great work. And I'm about to introduce you to one of them. I challenged one of my entire panels to come on my radio show before the election. And this one particular young lady is stepping up to meet that challenge. She's a crime survivor. She's from my hometown, San Francisco, and she's executive director of an organization called Californians for Safety and Justice, the Alliance for Safety and Justice's flagship state-based program, which is in California. She served 2 years as their associate director, as well as the California State Director of Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice. And she's helped pass historic first-in-the-nation legislation that extended employment leave for all survivors of violence, as well as legislation permitting crime victims to terminate their leases if they don't feel safe in their homes anymore following a crime. That kind of work. Tinisch Hollins, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I guess we should start with your story, since this is your first time on this show, and I met you in your capacity as an executive director. But one of the, I'll call it excuses, one of the reasons that people use why we need to go back to this 3 strikes model, why we need to get rid of progressive prosecutors, why we need to have more and more punitive policies, is because this idea that it's being called for by survivors of crime. So I wonder if you would share your story with us.
Yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much for the invite. So yeah, I'm a native of San Francisco. Love my city. Beautiful community. I grew up in a few neighborhoods, but came of age in Bayview Hunters Point, which is, very much like the south side of a lot of cities. South Central LA, South Chicago, beautiful community, but definitely got devastated during the war on drugs and the crack era. And I saw that impact in my family all my brothers and, most of the men in my family have been touched by the system or had some type of interaction with law enforcement. Very early in my life, I just learned that the response to anything that happened in our community or in our family was call the police. Kids late to school, truancy, officers are coming to your house. People struggling with drugs and addiction, police are kicking in doors and searching houses, breaking up families. And I saw that happen. And, my parents, my father was a business owner, my mother was a homemaker. They really wanted to provide stability for our family that was, being impacted by this and for the whole community. My father was a business owner, so people who, ended up going to jail or prison, he a lot of times would be the only one to offer them a job when they came home. And, family members trying to kick their addiction and, cousins and family members being removed, they would come to my house and my mother would, make sure the kids got back into school, try to make sure that we had, those meetings with the family members so that the kids could reunify. And I grew up seeing that and just realizing how important it was to have someone who could advocate, have someone who could open a door opportunity, and my family modeled for me, the work that I do in the community now. So as a young person, I didn't realize that I was becoming an organizer. I was very much influenced by, the music and the culture in the Bay Area, grew up hearing stories about the Panthers, being old enough but young enough to, see that history in real life, people organizing and pushing back against the system, but also taking care of their people. And that inspired me from a very young age. And so when the 90s came around, seeing a lot of my friends and family members being impacted, homicides started to spike, gun violence, in a way that I don't think our community had ever seen that before. I remember in the span of 3 years, I lost 40 friends and extended family members to gun violence. And I kind of became an organizer at that time, feeling like, seeing so many of my people, lose their lives that way and helping, mothers try to raise money for burials and, trying to make sure that people got dignity, got treated with respect when, the worst moment of their life happened. I got to see that up close and see where and how the systems really contributed to a lot of what we were experiencing. People feeling like they weren't safe. And so they didn't have an option to call and get help if something happened. There was no one to call. We only had each other. And so I learned a lot. I learned a lot about where the problems were and how they were created and how the systems were contributing, but also that our voices didn't seem to matter in the conversation about what to do. And I felt like that was wrong. I knew that the people in my community, my family, my friends were brilliant people. They were hardworking people. And a lot of situations, that we found ourselves in were not necessarily our doing. But people didn't seem like we had the competency or the answers. And so I would create space and community to hear from, make sure the people who were directly impacted got a chance to speak. And speak to the system specifically when they came to our community. I would hold meetings, I would hold rallies. I would, create space for the young people, hold events. And that just became a big part of my life and eventually in my career. And all the things that I was doing, a big part of it was to protect my family, was to, make sure that my brothers and my sister and everyone close to me had an opportunity. They had an option. And didn't feel like the only thing they could do was participate in what they saw happening around us. I wanted to be that example. And so that, that work created opportunities for me. I worked in, city government for a while. I continued to do organizing. And during this time, even with the great work that I was doing and the ways that, I was able to help community, I still wasn't able to stop a lot of those issues from impacting my family. And over time, I ended up losing 2 of my brothers to gun violence. One died during a crime in progress that he was allegedly blamed for, and another was, a victim of a crime, wrong place, wrong time, as they say. And, after helping so many people in my community, I thought that I knew. I thought that I knew, what went on and what people experienced. But when it hit my house and it hit my family, it really opened my eyes. It just shook my soul to see the level of trauma and pain that families experience when something like this happens, and how traumatic it is to have to rely on a system that participates in a lot of ways in what we experience. Having people not answer questions, investigators not answer questions, law enforcement, people not taking into consideration the situation that our family might be in, the safety, forcing cooperation, all kinds of things. People needing to relocate now, and the financial struggles that come with it. And, it's not just the person, who lived in the household, but the whole family and community. Yeah. I just learned a lot, from what happened with my family about where the system was broken, especially when it came to victims of crime from our community. It was almost like you can't be considered a victim. You're not a victim, especially if you're somebody who had contact with the system like my brothers did. They weren't even eligible for victim compensation. So we had to raise money, to lay my brothers to rest with dignity. Even the insurance that we had, they didn't qualify for it because of the circumstances of their death. These are things that I didn't really know could happen, when something happens like this. So, as I work through my own family trauma and, trying to, get stability after these incidents happen, I also started to connect more with Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice. They had been around for a couple of years. They were an advocacy group of survivors from communities like mine.
Okay,
I had
Tinisch,
never seen a victim's. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead and finish that thought. We'll continue the conversation when we come forward here and talk more about the organization and how you connected with them.
Yeah, I connected with them in 2017 and, started organizing and bringing other survivors into the conversation about how to change. And that's really what led me to where I am today with this work.
Tinisch Hollins, our guest. You're welcome to call if you want to get in this conversation, 800-920-1580. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to here with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
We're thrilled to announce that the Dear Future Wifey podcast is now available on the Urban One Podcast Network. This show, hosted by Latiris R. Whitfield, explores the journey of discovering and rediscovering love and relationships. With over 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, Dear Future Wifey has become a prototype for discussions about love and relationships. Learn how to rediscover love, heal, and have faith in relationships. Go to urbanonepodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
King C. Gillette knows you're dedicated to your barbershop routine, but how do you maintain the beard hair you already have? The King C. Gillette Beard Thickener helps to reduce patchiness and strengthens hair's resilience to breakage. Apply the King C. Gillette Beard Thickener daily to see a thicker and fuller beard in just 14 days. It's highly scented with King C. Gillette's signature scent. Just trim, wash, and soften. With King C. Gillette.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down, get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad Pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties: classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
Talking with Tinisch Hollins. She's the Executive Director of Californians for Safety and Justice. And you're describing just your activism as you grew up, but also the trauma of 2 of your brothers being murdered, and how you connected in 2017 with the organization of which you're now the Executive Director. So explain, what the organization is and how that connection happened.
Yeah, so Californians for Safety and Justice is around 11 years old, and this organization was founded at a time where California was really leading the way in mass incarceration. We had an issue with jail and prison overcrowding. The conditions inside our state prisons were deplorable. In fact, the state was headed towards a human rights violation. And so the California Supreme Court got involved and, basically told the state that if they didn't figure out how to reduce the jail population, that there was going to be some federal interventions and some interruptions to the resources for the state. And around that time, there were many organizers starting this work around criminal justice reform. It was still really new. And CSJ was one of those organizations that started leading the way around this conversation about how we stop relying on jails, prison, and policing exclusively for safety. Well, part of their strategy in thinking about policy solutions was to bring the people who are directly impacted into that conversation to inform the policy. And so they started first with victims and survivors of crime for a couple of reasons. One is because for a long time, the victims' rights movement in this country has been the primary advocate for tough on crime. It's the victims' advocacy groups that brought about things like a 3 strikes law in California, which led to, the situation that I just mentioned with the overcrowding in California state prisons. And so they thought it was important to bring the voices of victims and survivors who aren't necessarily reflected in that organizing from Black and brown and poor communities, marginalized communities. The other thought behind that was that in our communities, many people have both experiences. They've been touched by the criminal justice system and they've been victims of crime. I think the statistic says something like 80% of people who are incarcerated for violent crime have witnessed or experienced a crime themselves. They've been a victim themselves. And so they thought that was really important. If we're going to, create policy around how to change public safety, we got to look at all of these different issues and how the underlying causes and how they all fit in. And so they started organizing and bringing survivors like myself. They started this Crime Survivor Network around the same time in 2012. And over the past 11 years have been going around the country bringing survivors and people impacted by the system into this conversation about, how we change policy, to make sure that people have second chances, that, survivors get the support they need. But more than that, to look at what's driving folks into the system and how do we end the reliance on jail and prison, because we know the damage that has done.
Yeah, a lot of thoughts are coming up. Of course, my own sister was murdered by gun violence, and you find out a lot of things about the way that the system works. But also, as a family that's a victim of gun violence, you have to really think about your values and what really does keep us safe. I was so proud of my bonus mom and my father when they denied prosecutors seeking the death penalty. Because to me, if you're against it in general, you have to be against it personally. And we have to, it's the victims of violent crime that have a different mentality or a different idea about what keeps us safe that often aren't heard, right?
Exactly. And, it's not easy. I always say that every, survivor family member might have a different idea of what justice and accountability might look like. But the truth is that a lot of, what we hear when victims are brought into the conversation is they bring victims who are angry and are looking for revenge and who have not been helped. And a lot of that is contributed to the system. The system, makes people feel that way. It doesn't respond. There are not enough options, for what we're looking for when it comes to justice and accountability. The system doesn't even ask us, right? So you get prosecutors and folks who kind of come in and they have one way of seeing it and they have a job to do. But, it doesn't leave room for healing. It doesn't leave room for, what survivors need on the day-to-day or that trauma that we talked about that we know our families experience. And so a lot of times they bring victims in who are raw in that emotion and they're angry and they're calling, for one thing, which is they want revenge. They want retribution. They want someone to pay for what happened to them without thinking about, what are the long-term and what's the long-term investment that we're trying to make that we need so this never happens again to us or anyone else. And that's where, our survivor voices come in because we understand more than anyone. We got to see both ends of this. What happens when the only option you have for safety is, law enforcement, is police, jails, and prisons, but we don't have healing. We don't have access to trauma recovery. We don't have mental health. We see how lopsided that is and the damage that it does long term. So, bringing that perspective into the conversation is very, very important.
Yeah. It's ironic we're having this conversation on my little sister's birthday. Shani Baraka is born on October 23rd. So happy birthday, Shani. Rest in power.
Happy birthday, Shani.
Yeah, happy birthday, Shani Baraka. And, it is many different ways to find healing. My brother, Raz Baraka, built a center. He's the mayor of Newark. He built the Shani Baraka Center for domestic violence, survivor, and women's health in my sister's name. And so, that's one way of dealing with it. Every family has to deal with that violence the way that works for them. But what I want to talk about when we come forward is this whole idea, and I know you have to be careful because you're the director of a nonprofit and we're in the middle of an election cycle, but this idea that somehow the fear, the pain, and the harms that have been done to families are then exploited to create conditions that allow people, us, Black people, to vote against our own best interests. It's something that hurts my heart. And I just want to talk about how we see through that, especially at this particular point in time. I'm Dominique DiPrima for KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 things you should know from BIN News. The accused school shooter who allegedly opened fire at Appalachian High School in Georgia is pleading not guilty. The 14-year-old was indicted on 55 counts related to the September shooting that left 4 dead and injured 9. Former President Barack Obama says America is ready for President Kamala Harris. He campaigned in Detroit, Michigan last night for Harris, along with rapper Eminem, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and more. A Canadian Walmart is closed as police investigate the death of a woman whose body was found inside an oven in the store. Halifax police say they were called to the location where the young woman was found inside a walk-in oven. Police have yet to confirm the cause and manner of death. And a woman in Australia is safe after spending 7 hours wedged upside down between 2 boulders trying to retrieve her iPhone. The woman slipped into a 10-foot crevice in New South Wales. Rescuers say the 23-year-old managed to stay calm throughout the whole ordeal. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Hi, I'm
I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 in my garage after I overpaid for new blinds. I researched the industry, hired my mom, and 14 years later, we're one of the largest retailers of custom blinds in the U.S. Don't pay too much for new blinds. Go to Blindster.com.
Is this the title? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
LeBron James and his son Bronny made NBA history Tuesday night during the Lakers' regular season opener against Minnesota. It was the first time a father and son were on the court at the same time in an NBA regular season game. With 4 minutes left in the second quarter, Lakers coach J.J. Redick subbed in LeBron and Bronny off the bench. They were on the court together for 2 minutes and 41 seconds before Redick replaced Bronny. Bronny was scoreless and did not play in the second half. The Lakers beat Minnesota behind a dominant performance from Anthony Davis, 36 points, 16 rebounds, and 3 block shots. Sad news for Dodgers Nation. Fernando Valenzuela passed away Tuesday night. He was 63. The legendary pitcher was with the Dodgers for 10 of his 17 Major League seasons. He was the National League Cy Young Award winner and Rookie of the Year in 1981. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Have you heard of the 50-30-20 rule? This can help you spend and save your money wisely. So, how does it work? Distribute your dollars into 3 buckets. 50% towards needs, 30% towards your wants, and 20% goes to savings. Use this tool to help your journey to financial success. Sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase & Company.
Take it from Michelle Obama.
This election is going to be close. Michelle Obama is asking you, no, I'm telling y'all to do something.
This election is our moment to continue the fight of those who came before us. And we have the power to do it, but only if we do it together.
We did it before, y'all, and we sure can do it again. Let us work like our lives depend on it.
Paid for by NAACP.
Sweet chocolate reward. Sweet chocolate reward.
This is not just the sound of someone picking up a sweet treat at Walgreens. This is the sound of someone picking up a sweet treat right after receiving all their vaccines in one trip. This is the sound of treating yourself, because you protected yourself.
Stop by or schedule both your flu and COVID-19 vaccines today and grab yourself a sweet treat while you're at it. Vaccine subject to availability. State, age, and health-related restrictions may apply.
Hey, can you blow up some balloons for Jack's party?
I can't. I'm so congested.
You need Sinex Saline from Vicks.
Sinex Saline nasal spray?
Yeah, just Sinex. Breathe.
Sinex Saline instantly clears everyday congestion associated with colds and year-round allergies with a gentle, ultra-fine mist that's no mess and easy to control.
Daddy, we need more balloons.
On it.
Enjoy life's important moments without congestion. Try Sinex Saline from Vicks. Just Sinex. Breathe. Use as directed.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. The Live Your Life organization mentors young women, helping them break negative mindsets and see beyond their surroundings. Through career exposure and hands-on training, they're encouraged to think big, stay focused, and make positive choices. Founded by Nikisha Mama Boo Smith, who transformed her life to become a community leader. Live Your Life is changing lives, but they need your help. They're raising funds to keep their new building open and expand their programs. Your donations will support food, clothes, hygiene products, and holiday giveaways. Visit liveyourlife32.com. That's LIVEYOLIFE32.com to help today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
You got a big mouth. Hello, Joe, you're up. Welcome.
We're unapologetically progressive, and we don't black down.
And I'm in conversation with Tinisch Hollins, Executive Director of Californians for Safety and Justice. It's kind of just breaking down what they do. And I was posing the question about this kind of fear-mongering tactic that's very popular among conservatives. And it feels like, as a family who has been victimized by violence, almost like we're being used for political gain.
Yeah, you do see that happen, and it's true. There's a lot of exploitation of the grief, the pain, and that, they bring that voice at a time when people are very raw and need support, and it's very inhumane, honestly, the way that victims and survivors are treated, and that's regardless of, their perspective on whether or not they want someone to be held accountable or how they want them to be held accountable. I think, no matter if they're a more conservative person or a more liberal person, if you talk to survivors, they have a lot of commonality with how they're treated and how they feel like their stories have been treated. I know I've experienced that, and it seems to be really intentional. When people have political agendas, they want someone who is compelling. They want someone who can tug at the heartstrings and move people emotionally. And who better to do that than someone who's had, probably one of the worst things ever happen to them in their lives, have to share that with the world. So it's unfortunate, but you see it happen a lot, and that pain has been used to author laws and to move legislation that has done a lot of harm to our communities.
I feel like we're in one of those moments now. I've been on the microphone for many years, and I remember I was on the mic arguing against 3 strikes. I was on the mic arguing against many of the Clinton policies that ended up criminalizing entire swaths of our community. I'm not sure, lots of people say I won't tell you how to vote. I will. You don't have to listen to me, obviously. You look at lots of different sources. But I guess my real question is, how do we see through that fear? I mean, certainly as a victim of violence, you, your family, yourself, could definitely be consumed by that kind of fear. So how do you see through that to really understand what is going to be best for the greater good?
Yeah, honestly, it's your own personal work. And I say this to survivors a lot. We have conversations. It just came up last night in the conversation that I was having with folks. Someone who advocates for us to stop relying on jails and prisons. I also have had 2 homicides in my family, and in one of those situations, there's someone currently in custody. And, people ask, well, how do you advocate around the country about, reform and, creating opportunities for people to rehabilitate or restorative justice when this happened to you and you can see the effect? And my answer is always that this is bigger and longer than the pain that I've experienced in my family. This is about the future. And I'm only able to say that because I've accepted what's happened and I do my work to heal. There are people in my family that don't feel the same way that I do. Right? When I share my family story, I share my family story with that in mind, that there are people in my immediate family who feel very differently than I do. And I have to hold space for their pain and for their perspective. But I also understand that their perspective is rooted in the fact that they have this pain that's gone unaddressed, that they haven't got the support that they feel like they needed, and that absent of their voice, of them participating in the conversation, or my voice participating in the conversation, they won't get it, and neither will anyone else in our community. And so it takes, voices of folks who can go beyond their own personal pain to bring this perspective and help folks understand where the system is flawed, what people really experience, and what they need to recover. And that helps us figure out the bigger questions about what is justice supposed to look like in a situation like this? What are the options that we have? We think about violence in our community specifically. Well, not just in our community, because they have this, this narrative around black on black crime or, crime that only happens in communities of color. Most crime happens. Most people are victims or victimized by someone they know, right?
Yeah.
There's familial. So that's a narrative that we have to kill. But, it's true that most crimes are committed by people who have some type of relationship or familiar with each other in some type of way. And so when you think about that, and the only option you have for justice is someone to prison for the rest of their life, or in your family situation when they're offering the death penalty, where is the room for healing and restoration for all the lives that are impacted by that, especially if they have a connection in their community, in their family, or anywhere else? So we have to be able to broaden the conversation, but it's hard to do that if you only have people who are being exploited in their pain and, want to see retribution. And those are the only voices that you're hearing. There are a lot more people like you and your family and mine that are like, we need other options, but we also need to heal.
Right, because we want to know what's actually going to keep us safe and what's actually going to be better for our community as a whole. I think Donald Trump said we just need one good day of really rough policing and it'll solve all of our crime problems. I personally don't believe that. I feel like more violence begets more violence. And so, it's not that I don't want to be safe or I don't want public safety. It's just I don't think jailing more and more people and bumping them off begets greater safety.
It doesn't. We know that America has mass exported violence as currency. Like that's what we do very well. So you're going to find it everywhere. You're going to find it in the justice system. You're going to find it in your schools. You're going to find it everywhere. So it's no surprise that a voice like Donald Trump's will be calling for that because, it fuels the American economy and everything else. But that's my own personal perspective. What I would say is that, we have enough evidence that tough policing and roughing people up and throwing them away doesn't create safety. When we go back to the 90s when we had higher rates of incarceration, you had high-profile incidents of police brutality like Rodney King, and nothing has stopped since then. We still see people's lives being taken through state violence. And then we see the violence that happens in incarceration for any of us who have family members in the prison system or jails or who have gone into those environments. That they're not rehabilitative at all. And that they have cultures of violence that exist there too. So you have to see how this contributes to a cycle. And so that logic just doesn't make any sense. There's data that supports it, but we also have decades and decades of lived experience. When you go into the Black community and, 2 out of 4 people that you talk to have had some type of interaction with the criminal justice system. They've been in jail or prison, or someone in our family has. We know more than anybody that doesn't keep anyone safe. And so bringing that into the conversation is very important, but you have to have folks who have a broader perspective on safety and what that means, not just, safety that only applies to my community or my family or my household, but how do you make safety equitable? Because if the people who are the least harmed are safe, then everyone is, or the most harmed are safe. Everyone is.
Yeah, that's a great point. When we come forward, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the fiscal impacts of something like Proposition 36. Again, I know you won't tell folks how to vote, but I've just completed a conversation earlier this morning with Dr. Rosie Milligan, who was initially torn, feeling like Prop 36 was going to be, helpful to our community, feeling like she wanted to vote against Prop 6 because of fiscal impacts, jobs. And so I know that as a nonprofit who, to some extent, like many nonprofits that provide services and support, you have benefited from the redirection of certain funds. And so I want to look at what we could be talking about as far as impact to some of those services and nonprofits should Prop 36 pass. We're talking with Tinisch Hollins, and you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Before running for state senate, Laura Richardson was named one of the most corrupt members of Congress, guilty on 7 counts of ripping off taxpayers and a pattern of deception trying to cover it up. Richardson is too shady for state senate. For your state senator, frontline nurses, classroom teachers, and Planned Parenthood Advocacy Project support Democrat Michelle Chambers, a champion for abortion rights, higher wages for workers, and more affordable health care. Democrat Michelle Chambers for state senate.
Ad paid for by nurses and educators supporting Chambers for Senate 2024, sponsored by labor and nonprofit environmental and health organizations, Ad Committee's top funders, SEIU California State Council, not authorized by a candidate or committee controlled by a candidate.
That morning chill means truck
season.
5 more minutes.
No snoozing. Do it all in a Chevy Colorado or Silverado, including the class-leading range of the Silverado EV.
Talking to me?
Work, play, hauling, off-roading, a Chevy truck can take it all.
Okay, I'm up.
It's Chevy Truck Season. Get 0% financing on all 2024 Silverado 1500 pickups when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet, together, let's drive.
0% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 9.3%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available at least in some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 10/31/24.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality. And our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more. All designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada. Member FDIC.
Black Women for Wellness and Stand LA are standing up against harmful oil drilling in South Los Angeles. Our Bad Neighbors campaign exposes the serious health risks of drilling in our neighborhoods. You've seen the billboards, posters, and coffee sleeves around South LA. Now join the movement to protect our health, our families, and our future.
Visit bwwla.org/no-drilling to learn more and get involved. That's bwwla.org/no-drilling.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Febreze. So my home is also my office, and before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up, then spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day. Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
And it is a fascinating conversation with Tinisch Hollins, Executive Director of Californians for Safety and Justice. So one of the things we did on the panel discussion we had at the LAJCOD conference was a number of nonprofit leaders like yourself were talking about something a lot of us haven't focused on around Prop 36 is the possible fiscal impact for jobs, for service providers, and for the ability to receive said services and supports.
Yes. So my organization, while a nonprofit, we also have a C4. So we're leading, one of the organizations leading the campaign against Prop 36. So I will say it's a strong no for the fiscal impact and many other reasons. But when we think about, the changes that would be made under Prop 36, increasing penalties for low-level crime, which is something that we were able to change through Prop 47. That means, hundreds of thousands of people potentially being trafficked back into jail and prison for low-level crimes. The fiscal impact of this could be $750 million or more. I know the state LAO report had some figures in there, but when we're talking about prosecutorial discretion, meaning, prosecutors will decide how much time and how long folks will be there, and them having these tools, the possibilities of the number of folks who would go into the system and the cost can be astronomical. And we know that that's going to be devastating for our communities in many ways, but it also means that the fiscal savings that the state has had over the past 11 years that have been redirected to things like, community violence intervention, prevention programs, schools, reentry programs, drug treatment programs, like the very programs that if Prop 36 were to pass, they would be mandating drug treatment for people who have simple possession. The funding for those programs will be cut if Prop 36 passes. So this is, it's going to have a huge fiscal impact on the state. We're going to, reverse, not just in policy, but fiscally, moving money, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars back into the system, back into incarceration and away from community.
And that's because it costs so much to just lock people up, right? So when we think about this idea that, I don't know, people are buying this idea that folks can just go and shoplift and do this and do that and not be arrested, which actually isn't true. But when you put people in prison long term, that is expensive. And so doing it for something that is relatively minor sucks money out of other programs because you got to pay for those incarceration facilities.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And, I think a lot of folks discount the cost, right? Taxpayers really discount the cost. We're talking $100,000 a year ahead per person in the criminal system. And then there are a lot of things that folks, the average voter, maybe doesn't really understand about the process in the criminal justice system, but how long folks can be waiting. The courts are backlogged. Folks being held in county jail for years, just waiting sentencing and then being transferred to state prison for a longer amount of time. The conditions in those places with programming oftentimes being interrupted because they're understaffed or because programs are underfunded. So this notion that people will go to jail or prison to get help is really a misconception because folks don't really understand the capacity. And so, you have people who are just being warehoused, bodies that are just being warehoused in the system, which is what we had 12 years ago, right, before Prop 47 was passed. And that's the reality that, this thinking that maybe this is only going to apply to the people who commit the crimes, it's their lives that are going to be interrupted. No, it's all of us. We're all going to be affected if we go back, to relying on jails and prisons for safety. We know that doesn't work.
Do you think, maybe you can break down some of the kinds of services and organizations that would be defunded by a Proposition 36?
Yeah, so, we were joined on the panel at JCOT the other day by the LA Reentry, LARP. And this consortium has worked for years to help folks who are coming out of incarceration make sure they get stabilized, employment, housing. We also had Shields for Family, which is a really well-known program down here in LA. It's done amazing work, helped folks who are coming out of the system really stabilize themselves, their families, get access to education, stabilized housing, employment. These are all things that we know if people's basic needs are met, if those barriers are removed, that they're less likely to reoffend. And we've seen that. We have the data to prove it. These programs have been highly successful. The rates of folks who are returning to jail or prison after going to these programs is extremely low because people have been able to overcome their barriers. And that's saying a lot. When you think about the fact that, someone who has a criminal conviction has over 40,000 lifetime restrictions. Basic things like getting a barber license or being able to open a daycare or even chaperoning your kids on a field trip. Like there are so many things in someone's life that become a barrier, after they have a contact with the criminal justice system. So these programs are helping to remove barriers so that they can have stability, even though they may have these lifetime penalties attached to them. And so there are a lot of things that, we have to do to correct that, but these programs really stand in the gap to help. We also have trauma recovery centers. Back in 2012, at the time, there were only 2 trauma recovery centers in the state of California. Most folks didn't even know what they were. But these are programs that victims of crime can access for free. They do not need to obtain a police report or cooperate in an investigation. They can simply disclose that they were a victim of a crime and that they need support, and they get access to free mental health. They get home visits from a social worker or case manager, to help them overcome their barriers. They get referrals. financial assistance. They can get referred for financial assistance. All these things matter when someone's been a victim of a crime. Most people don't even get victims compensation. They help people complete victims compensation forms. So we went from having 2 in the state to having 24 in the state, all over the state. And that is a direct result of the Prop 47 savings that we were able to reallocate to programs like this. And so our communities rely on these things for safety. This is what we need.
San Francisco gets a bad rap in the mainstream media, being ravaged by crime, and I know that we've seen a backlash there. Your progressive prosecutor was unseated. They're working on targeting another one in Alameda. What would you say to those who haven't been to San Francisco, or or don't know firsthand about why you still stand by alternatives to incarceration and sort of a care first model amidst what we're hearing about San Francisco?
Well, in San Francisco, like most major cities, especially after the pandemic, has experienced some challenges. But I think the rhetoric around how bad it is in San Francisco is very intentional. There are folks that have a lot of money and a lot of influence who are, trying to change the landscape politically in cities like San Francisco and in Oakland. Their dollars have funded these recall efforts, and they're also, running candidates, trying to change laws, to make sure that their communities and their demographics have more representation. They have a very clear agenda, real estate investors, folks who, are in the tech sector, who have billions of dollars, are really influencing decisions that are being made there. And they're driving this narrative that things are out of control, that the city has fallen apart. And a lot of it is just fear-mongering and rhetoric. Being a native of San Francisco, I remember when things were much worse in my city. I remember when we had over 100 homicides one year. Violent crime is at a historic low in San Francisco. But we do see homelessness. We do see the fentanyl crisis. We do see things locked up in, our retail stores. But I will tell you that San Francisco is not unique there. I've been all over the country this year, and every major city sees the same challenges. So to blame all of that on one piece of legislation or one leader makes no sense, right? But that's what we see happening right now. And because of that, we see a lot of knee-jerk reactions like the recalls and other things. California's been pretty consistent. Like folks like to say that it's because California's liberal. I like to say it's because, Californians are a little more sophisticated. This state is a huge state and a very resource state compared to the other states in our country. And so I think our opinions about what it's going to take to keep our state stable will always look and sound different for that reason. We're diverse in that way. And so San Francisco being an example of that, for years has taken different approaches to deal with things like homelessness and addiction. And they're still working through that. But what we know to be true is that when people have immediate access to the support they need, then we see good outcomes.
Absolutely.
And what we see in San Francisco and other places is systemic, right? It's about priorities being in the wrong place. It's about legislation not moving in the interest of our community and creating barriers for us to deliver service. Okay,
we're going to have to leave it there. It's time for Tavis Smiley's show. Tinisch Hollins, thank you so much for the conversation. Safeandjust.org, safeandjust.org is where you can find her.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Tavis Smiley's up next. He's got a full lineup of show for you today. I'm Dominique DiPrima. Like my mama used to say, history is now, and we are making it together. Until tomorrow, one love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 things you should know from BIN News. The accused school shooter who allegedly opened fire at Appalachian High School in Georgia is pleading not guilty. The 14-year-old was indicted on 55 counts related to the September shooting that left 4 dead and injured 9. Former President Barack Obama says America is ready for President Kamala Harris. He campaigned in Detroit, Michigan last night for Harris, along with rapper Eminem, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and more. A Canadian Walmart is closed as police investigate the death of a woman whose body was found inside an oven in the store. Halifax police say they were called to the location where the young woman was found inside a walk-in oven. Police have yet to confirm the cause and manner of death. And a woman in Australia is safe after spending 7 hours wedged upside down between two boulders trying to retrieve her iPhone. The woman slipped into a 10-foot crevice in New South Wales. Rescuers say the 23-year-old managed to stay calm throughout the whole ordeal. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 in my garage after I overpaid for new blinds. I researched the industry, hired my mom, and 14 years later, we're one of the largest retailers of custom blinds in the U.S. Don't pay too much for new blinds. Go to Blindster.com.
Is this the This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
LeBron James and his son Bronny made NBA history Tuesday night